But I started yelling out. I said, is there a paramedic in the building? I have a burn victim here. If you're a paramedic, please help us. And if not, please step to the right and let us through. And they did.
Step to the right.
People squeezed over as much as they could. They literally opened a path for us to go down. We kept going down. We got down to the first floor, and the fire warden keeps going down. And I said, where are you going? He says, we're going out through the garage. I went like, okay. So I turned to Virginia. I said, we already walked down 78 flights of stairs. What's another 4 or 5? And we continued down. We got down 2 flights when all of a sudden the door on the first floor opens up and some guy yells down, where are you people going? I yelled back, we're going out through the garage. He goes, no, you can't get out through the garage. You got to come back up here and get out through the first floor. So we got out on the first floor, and what I found out later was that the people in the garage never got out.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Who was the guy who opened the door? I don't know. Never saw him, only heard a voice.
Wow.
And why did he pick that moment to open the door? I have no idea, but that person, being, angel, saved our lives that day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the re-airing of this episode with Ari Schonbrun. This episode aired 2 years ago on Meaningful People, and we sat down with Ari Schonbrun, who survived the attacks on September 11th, 2001. Today, it's 24 years ago to this day, to the moment that such chaos was going on here in New York and around the world. We want to thank Ari for sharing his story of survival, story of how he was heroic on that day and how Hashem plucked him out of a burning building and saved his life. Just something I want to let you know, meaningfulminute.org. New website is up, and there's an article right now on that front page, something related to 9/11 as well, the story of Abe Zalmanowitz. So head to meaningfulminute.org today. You are listening to the Meaningful People podcast.
The podcast featuring our nation's most impactful, influential,
and meaningful people. It's a pleasure to be joined by Ari Schonbrun.
welcome.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule and being here. I wanted to sort of start off by saying that something that I was discussing with Momo earlier was, it's crazy that people listening to this, I would say a big chunk of people listening to this, were not even alive when 9/11 took place in 2001. And for you, who's someone who experienced so much on that day, what's a thought like that? It must be crazy to think like that.
It is. It's so often that I come across, people, and invariably the conversation goes towards 9/11. And I would ask, I said, do you remember 9/11? They go, I wasn't born yet. And I go like, oh. But then I realized, you know what? It's 21 years ago. Guess, when you start out going to school, all right, by 21 in general, all right, not really in the frum world, but in the Goyish Welt, at 21, you're graduating college.
Right.
So these are college kids that weren't born yet, during 9/11. So it's just, it's mind blowing. It really is. I'm actually going to, there's something going on in the UN on September 8th that I'm going to about victims of terror and the like. And they're going to have, I'm hoping they're going to let me speak. They asked, if you want to speak, and I put down, yes, I do. It's only like 2 minutes, but hey, you can get a lot in 2 minutes,
Yeah.
So, because my problem is that if you walk up and down the street, you stop the common man in the street and you ask him about 9/11, either he wasn't born yet or he was, but he has no idea what you're talking about because it just, it's not in his wheelhouse. And they're not learning it in school. They're not being taught in school. Maybe, you see, it's not in the history books. All right.
Well, I think it's a little bit of an interesting stage because it is history, but it's also pretty contemporary. 22 years ago, 21 years ago, that's not an incredible amount of time.
You're saying it's by design not being taught?
Do you,
Yes, I firmly believe that it's by design that it's
How come?
not being taught.
why?
Well, certainly, we don't want to get political. I don't want to get political.
Okay, that's fine.
But I just think that it is by design. It's not being taught, and it needs to be taught. And that's one of the things I'm going to bring up at the UN, if they allow me to, is that, it's an event that affected the entire world. You say it was only 21 years ago. It's not really history, whatever, but it changed the world.
Mm-hmm.
All right. When Kennedy was shot, it changed the world. All right. And that was talked about all the time. And that was, throughout from the time that it happened until this day. I mean, it's always been something that's been, talked about. Everybody remember, where were you when Kennedy was shot? Now, you guys are too young for that, but I remember, okay, I was 6 years old, all right, but I had enough understanding that Kennedy was shot. I didn't know what it meant at the time, but, I knew what had happened.
Right. Well, listen, I think that the best thing, and this is why I think it's so important, and I was so happy to invite you onto the podcast, because let's talk about it. And I think we have to continue to talk about what happened on that day. And you specifically have your story, which is a miracle.
Yeah, we see it as our responsibility to give people like you a platform to reach all of our listeners, to be able to make sure, if it's not being taught, whether it's by design or otherwise, if we have a platform and we have an opportunity to share your story with people, it's very important to us that we provide you with that opportunity.
So let's do it. Let's jump back 22 years ago.
22 years. Wow.
You were working at Cantor Fitzgerald.
Yes, I was.
It was a Tuesday morning.
It was a Tuesday morning.
Beautiful day.
Beautiful day.
Until it wasn't.
You read the book.
But I also was in first grade. I was in first grade when that happened, and I was very young, but I had a sister working in the city, my sister Malky, and she didn't work in that area, but she ended up having, she walked home from the city. She walked to Queens, like many other people. And it was just, I remember, I attribute that day to most of my childhood anxiety, because I remember just being glued to the TV and just seeing something that's out of like a horror movie. Mm-hmm. Buildings on fire, buildings collapsing. And, my parents pulled me out of school, and it was just crazy.
It's interesting you say that, because it's I haven't met many people that were that young that actually remember it or were affected by it.
I think I'm like
you're in that sweet spot.
I'm in that spot. It really affected me, and like every year around this time, since I remember, there's a documentary, 102 Minutes That Changed America. I watched that. There's something about it that I don't know, maybe it's just they say trauma lives in the bones, so I guess it's just something that lives in my bones, and I don't know, sticks with me. Yeah.
Well, it was a Tuesday. It was a gorgeous day. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. It was beautiful. It was 20 to 7 in the morning. I had my briefcase over my shoulder, I had my cup of coffee in my hands, and I yelled up to my wife, "Bye, honey, love you, see ya." I yelled up to my kids, "Bye, kids, have a great day in school," and I started to walk out the door like I did every day. And then my wife yells down to me, and she says to me, "Did you do Baruch's book order?" And I learned something that day. I learned that teachers have a wonderful way of torturing parents. It's called the scholastic book order.
Do they still do this?
Oh, yes, they do.
Yeah? Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I figure they just say like order on Amazon. What is it? You have to sit there filling things out?
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Wow.
With their recommendations, which ones are cool, which ones are not cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had to...
So my wife yelled out to me, "Did you do Baruch's book order?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And she said, "You're not leaving the house until you do the book order." Now, there are a couple of things that happened before and during this period of time. My wife is one of the school principals at Benos Beis Yaakov in Far Rockaway, and she was just opening school. It was exactly 1 week before Rosh Hashanah, so things were very, very hectic, and she didn't have a chance to do it, which is why it was my job to do it. Fortunately or unfortunately, I didn't do it, and so she says, "You're not leaving the house until you do the book order." So I put my briefcase down, put my cup of coffee down, walked into my kitchen, and proceeded to negotiate with my 8-year-old for the next 20 minutes. And I whittled him down to 2 books. I felt pretty good. Interestingly enough, the 2 books that he picked were from a series called Survivor.
Wow.
When those books showed up, sent a shiver down my spine. I got to be honest with you. Now, you're going to see throughout my story, there's a lot of coincidences that happen throughout the course of the day. And, at the end of the day, you put it all together and it's obviously Yad Hashem.
Yeah.
All right. That's the only reason I'm here today. It was Yad Hashem. There's no other reason, because there's no way in a million years I should have been here, that I shouldn't have been killed. But Baruch Hashem. So, and one of the reasons I say that is because the book order was actually due on Monday. But my son left his pamphlet in school on Friday. So my wife wrote a note to the teacher asking him if he can have an extra day for the book order, and she wrote back with a note, said yes, of course, and she made sure to put the pamphlet into his knapsack. If he would have brought home the Scholastic book order pamphlet on Friday, I would have done it with him on Sunday, and you'd be sitting here with another person telling you a different story, because I'd be dead.
Wow.
Because I would have been sitting at my desk at 8 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday.
Like you were every other morning.
But because he left that pamphlet in school on Friday, I am here to tell you my story.
Baruch saved your life.
And because that teacher was cool sending it for the next week. When that teacher was faced with that decision, right, be compassionate, be flexible, allow the kid to bring in the book order a couple days late.
Right.
Some teachers say, no, sorry, you missed it.
Right. Correct. She was. And my wife wrote a note to the teacher afterwards thanking her
Wow.
for giving him the extra day, because that kindness on her part saved my life.
That's beautiful.
So we know that the first plane hit I think it was a South Tower.
Whoa, Nachi, how'd you get to the plane already?
Well, he's on his way to work.
Let him go to work.
You're on the way to work.
I went to work. I got to the Trade Center at 20 to 9. I was usually there at 8 o'clock. So I was like really, really running late. Things
Wow.
were, I was like really, really upset. I was upset with my wife that she cost me, that 20 minutes cost me 40. But I got over it that night, trust me.
I bet you did.
When I got home. So I get to the towers at 20 to 9. My office is on the 101st floor. Now, you couldn't take an elevator all the way up to 101. You took an express elevator up to 78, which was a sky lobby. And then from there, you would transfer to another elevator that would take you up to the higher floors. So I'm waiting down in the lobby, and the first elevator that came down was all the way on the right side of the lobby. So I ran down to the end of the lobby, get into the elevator, and I take it up to 78. When I get to 78, I realize that, of course, the elevator that I need to get to my floor was all the way on the left side of the sky lobby. So I get out of the elevator, I hang a left, and I start walking towards the bank of elevators. I must have been about 8 feet from those banks of elevators when, as best as I can describe, there was an explosion. I thought a bomb had gone off in the elevator. The entire building shook. The lights went out, the place filled with smoke, and I was literally thrown off my feet. There were people yelling and screaming, fire in the elevator, and I'm thinking to myself, of course there's a fire in the elevator. A bomb just went off in the elevators. Of course there's a fire. I didn't know.
It's probably very unsettling to happen knowing you're on the 78th floor of a building also. Like that's...
But you know what? That didn't enter
register?
my mind. That didn't register. The only thing that registered was the bomb in the elevator. Because,
Right.
all right, bomb in the elevator, it causes whatever damage it's going to cause. Now there's a fire. Okay. All right. You got to deal with it.
Right.
All right. So,
And our bodies aren't equipped to the trauma responses. We're not processing information.
Fight or flight.
correct. So, I get up. I'm looking for a way out. I see in between 2 banks of elevators, there's a light on. Now, I told you the lights went out, so that must have been an emergency light. So I crawled to that light because of all the smoke, right? They tell you stay low to the ground, right? I literally crawled to the light, and I stood up and I walked around behind that elevator bank, and there was an office there, a security office. I never knew there was an office there. I'd been working in that building for 8 years. I had no idea there was a security office over there. I walk in, I open the door and I walk in, I see this woman security guard. She's sitting with her back to the wall and she's crying her eyes out. And I leaned over to her and I said, ma'am, calm down. We're going to be okay. We're going to get out of here. And she calmed down a little bit, and she was whimpering. And I walked in, and in that office, there was the fire warden for the floor. Now, just as a point of information, every floor in the building had a person who was designated as the quote-unquote fire warden. He was the go-to guy in case of an emergency. So management, he had a special phone. There was a red phone. And he was the guy that if something happens, management would get a hold of him. If he knew something, he would get a hold of management. And, they would tell him what to do. So I ran over to him. I said, what do we do? Where do we go? The guy looks at me and goes, I don't know.
They don't really train for this, I guess.
Of course he didn't know. We had no idea what had happened.
Right.
We had no idea what had happened. We heard, after a little bit, that a plane had gone into the building. But I got to tell you something. My office was on the 101st floor. There used to be these little Cessna planes, these little Piper Cubs flying below me. Yeah. Right? I thought it was one of those little planes that lost control and went into the building. I never dreamed. I go back out into the hall to try and find a way out. I bump into a coworker of mine. Her name was Virginia DiChiara. Virginia was on the elevator that I was about to get on when that plane hit. And as she described it to me, when the plane hit, the walls of the elevator collapsed. The ceiling collapsed. A cable snapped, was sparking in the elevator. The jet fuel came down the sides of the elevators, ignited by the sparks, and there was a wall of fire. There were 3 people in that elevator. There was Roy Bell, Virginia, and myself. No, not me. Roy Bell, Virginia, and Renee. They were in the elevator. Now, what happened was when the plane hit, the doors jammed open about a foot. And when the fire hit, Roy Bell was the first one to jump out, and he suffered second-degree burns. Virginia, she jumped out right after him, and she suffered third-degree burns. And Renee, who was the last one out, she died from her burns. All in a space of 6, 8, 10 seconds? That's all it was.
Wow.
She sees me, she says to me, Ari, please help me. Whatever you do, please don't leave me. She was a mess. Her hair was singed. Her clothes were burned. She had, like I said, third-degree burns up and down her arms. She was a total mess. And I said to her, Virginia, I promise I won't leave you, and we will get out of here.
This is a woman that you knew. This is a coworker of yours?
This is a coworker of mine, yeah. Now, here's the irony. He's smiling because he knows this.
What? I smile a lot, don't worry.
Virginia and I were not good friends. She was an internal auditor who had been hired the year before, and the first department she audited was mine. And needless to say, she didn't give me very good marks. Wow. She almost got me fired.
Wow.
And there we were, she and I. I had a decision to make. I'm not going to make light of it. I'm running for my life, and, she's going to only hold me back. But at the end of the day, who are we? Rahmanim b'nei Rahmanim. That's who we are, and that's what we do. And our past did not matter. Nothing mattered. She was another human being in trouble. I was the guy that God put there, and I was going to do whatever it took to help this woman get out alive. So I took her into the office, sat her down, gave her a cup of water to drink. She couldn't hold the cup. We're talking about an 8-ounce cup of water, and she couldn't hold it because her hands were so severely burned. So I poured it into her mouth to give us some relief. Finally, the fire warden turns around and says, okay, we can get out. Stairwell on the left. Stairwell on the left. I'll never forget those words, believe me. We walked out of the office, and as we walk out and I hang a left, I see a little sign that, by the way, I look for now. Every time I walk into a building, I look for them. You know what the sign said? It said exit. And I look for those signs because I never know when it might save my life, because it certainly did that day.
Wow.
We followed the exit sign. It went around a bend. A guy ran ahead of me, opened the door. He says, I found it. And I look through and I see the stairwell, and I see there were lights on in the stairwell. So I figured they're emergency lights. So I turned to the people behind me, and there were about 6 or 8 other people with us. And I said, does anybody have a flashlight? Thinking to myself, if the lights do go out, it'll be pitch black. You're talking about you're in the middle of the building. There's no natural light anywhere. It'll be pitch black. And 2 people behind me, they raise and they go, yeah, we got flashlights.
For people listening in 2022, this is before the days where every cell phone was a flashlight.
Correct. I have to make that statement now. By the way, every time I talk about this story,
which makes it even crazier that people are walking with flashlights. Mm-hmm. Who carries around a flashlight?
Exactly, and that's what I was thinking. Where did you get a flashlight from, and why are you carrying it? I figured they were waiting for let's make a deal. You know, Monty Hall is going to come off from $100 for a flashlight. I don't know.
They were prepared.
Did you ever figure out why they had it or no?
No, but I didn't care.
Well, we know why they had it.
Right, but
I didn't care. I said, listen, folks, if the light go out, nobody panic. We will have light. And the next thing I did was I looked down at Virginia's feet. And I said, thank God she's wearing flats.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you something, there were high-heeled shoes in that stairwell all the way down. Women had kicked them off just to get down as fast as they could. Wow. So we started to head down. The fire warden, Roy Bill, myself, and Virginia, we walked in a line. I remember that because I told Virginia, if you feel faint, if you feel like you're going to fall forward, fall on me, and I'll carry you. And we headed down. We got down 3 flights of stairs. And as far as I'm concerned, one of the biggest miracles of the day happened to me then. And besides the fact that I wasn't killed when the plane hit.
Yeah. So now you're at floor 75.
My cell phone rang. Now, that look on your face says it all. Okay?
Yeah.
I was in the middle of the building, in the middle of a stairwell, in a building where you never got signal, especially on that day. Everything was blown out.
Yeah, on that day, once these attacks took place, everything was
dead,
down.
right? And my phone rang. I was so shocked. I picked it up. I went, hello? It was my wife on the other end of that phone. Wow. And she was telling me something about a plane going into a building. I had no idea what she was talking about. I said to her, Joyce, I'm in a stairwell. I'm on the 75th floor. I'm on my way down. Now is not a good time.
Did you connect that what she was talking about was
not at all.
Not at all. Wow.
And I said, I'll call you when I get out of the building. And I hung up the phone, not realizing that it would be hours before I ever got in touch with her again. Okay? So to me, major miracle.
Yeah.
You know, because at least now I knew that she knew that I wasn't killed when the plane hit, and that was very comforting for me.
And you still had no idea what happened.
No, we knew I knew a plane,
but not
went into the building. That's all I knew.
Right.
Okay? So we continued on down. We got down to the 50th floor. Virginia says to me, Ari, I can't go on. Can't do it. My first response was, all right, you know what? I'll have her sit down. We'll rest a little bit. I'll give her something to drink, and then we'll get up and we'll keep moving. And then I thought to myself, you know what? If she sits down, she may never get up. Yeah. And if she doesn't get up, she's going to die. And that wasn't on my agenda for the day, that's for sure. So I said, no, Virginia, you can do this. And we started giving her, some people had some water, Poland spring water or whatever. People had it, so we were giving her to drink, and we were pouring it on her arms to give her relief from the burns. Right. And I'm telling you, she's in agony. And now I'm coaching, all right? I'm counting the floors down, 45, 44, 42. You're doing great. And we were doing great until 38. 38 was backed up with people.
Oh, my gosh.
See, the firefighters had stopped the people from going down because they were coming up. Mm-hmm. So as we hit the big crowd, this one woman heard our footsteps and turned around, looked, and she saw Virginia, and she went like, ah! And Virginia looks at me and she says to me, Ari, how bad is it? I said, Virginia, you look great. You're fine. You're going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Now, I knew she was in trouble, all right? But I needed to keep her spirits up. And, you know, but I was scared. So I started to yell out.
Gemara says that we were able to deviate from the truth for a few reasons, one of which is Mipnei Darkei Shalom.
Right.
So you went all in on that one.
Oh, yeah.
It was that morning's daf, maybe, you know?
Yeah, but I started yelling out. I said, is there a paramedic in the building? I have a burn victim here. If you're a paramedic, please help us. And if not, please step to the right and let us through. And they did.
Step to the right.
People squeezed over as much as they could. They literally opened a path for us to go down. We kept going down.
Because of her injuries that they were able to observe?
Yeah. I mean, she was a mess. Okay, you know, looking at her, you knew she was in trouble.
So I'll stop there.
Yeah.
You had to make your decision when you encountered her in the elevator, whether or not you were gonna, you know, incorporate your experience with her to decide to fend for yourself, or whether you're gonna take her on your shoulders. And at the 38th floor, them seeing her is actually what opened the path for you down the stairs.
Oh, correct. And I was going to get to that. We'll get to that a little bit later in the story. That's only one part. Okay.
Okay.
Because we got down to the first floor, and the fire warden keeps going down. And I said, "Where are you going?" He says, "We're going out through the garage." I went like, "Okay." So I turned to Virginia. I said, "We already walked down 78 flights of stairs. What's another 4 or 5?" And we continued down. We got down 2 flights when all of a sudden the door on the first floor opens up, and some guy yells down, "Where are you people going?" I yelled back, "We're going out through the garage." He goes, No, you can't get out through the garage. You got to come back up here and get out through the first floor. So I told Virginia, we got to go back up 2 flights of stairs. She said a few things that I can't say on the radio or in mixed company or in any company.
How old was Virginia at that time?
She was my age.
So at that time you were...
Yes. 45.
Yes.
45.
So I can beep that out if you need.
Okay, yeah.
45, I think. She was, yeah, but we were basically the same age,
Okay.
give or take a year. And so we got out on the first floor, and what I found out later was that the people in the garage never got out.
Oh my gosh.
Who was the guy who opened the door? I don't know. Never saw him, only heard a voice.
Wow.
And why did he pick that moment to open the door? I have no idea, but that being, angel, saved our lives that day. So we come out on the first floor. Police and firefighters are there. They're telling us to go through the atrium. We're walking through the atrium, through the mall, it was a long walk to get out. We finally get out of the building. We get out on Church Street, and there are cops and firefighters there telling everybody uptown. They're telling people are running uptown. And I stopped the cop and I said, "Where do we go? I have a burn victim here." And he says, "Take her across the street in front of the Millennium Hotel. We're setting up a triage center there. There'll be an ambulance there. Bring her over there." And that's what I did. We went across the street, and sure enough, an ambulance comes in. We help her into the ambulance, and I breathe a sigh of relief because at least now I know she's getting medical attention. Before that, the only thing I could do is keep her spirits up, all right? But I couldn't help her medically. Now she's getting medical attention. I turn around, I look up at the buildings, and there's a guy standing next to me, and I looked at him and I said, "How did building 2 get on fire?" And the guy looks at me like I'm crazy. And he says, "What are you talking about? 2 jetliners went into the buildings. They're calling it a terrorist attack." I look at him like he's crazy. Like, what are you talking about?
Wow.
It was just, I couldn't fathom what had happened. And people say to me, "How is it possible that you didn't hear the second plane?" And I went, I'll tell you what my theory. I was so focused on my task at hand that I had just blocked everything else out. And all I was doing was focusing on getting Virginia out, the 2 of us getting out, and saving our lives. That's all I was focused on. And that's why I said I just never heard that second plane. All of a sudden, I realized the ambulance is still sitting there. So I go to the ambulance driver. I said, "Why aren't you leaving?" He goes, "Our instructions are we can't leave until we fill the ambulance." They were expecting a huge amount of casualties. And so they wanted to put 5, 6, 7, 8 people into an ambulance before they let it go. Virginia's writhing in pain. She's the Ari, I can't go on. I saw the paramedic working on her. He was trying to put IV into her hand, and he couldn't. That first layer of skin was gone.
Couldn't get the vein, yeah.
Nothing. It was just horrendous. And she says to me, "Ari, I'm going to faint." I said, "Virginia, hold on. You're going to be okay. Hold on." And all of a sudden, finally, they say, "All right, we're ready to roll." I breathe a sigh of relief because when that ambulance leaves, the only place I'm going is back into the building. And people look at me like I'm crazy, which I might be, but I'm looking to help. I'm looking for my friends. I'm looking for coworkers. All right. I'm not interested in I'm safe.
You had, again, you worked for Cantor Fitzgerald, which was on the 101st floor, and there was over 600 people that worked in that office.
There were 960 people that worked in that office.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
So the thought that you're having right now is, I came down with 3 people. There's 800 plus more,
Who knows,
900
right.
people that are up there.
It turns out there were only about 662 people on the upper floors
At the time.
But that was my thought process. That's where I'm going. And all of a sudden, Virginia turns to me and says to me, "Ari, you're coming with us." And I look at her like, Virginia, you don't need me anymore. I'm going to get hold of your mom. She asked me to call her mother, and she gave me the number. I said, I'm going to get hold of your mom. She's going to meet you at the hospital, and you're going to be okay. She turns to the ambulance driver. She says, we're not leaving unless he comes with us. I look at the ambulance driver. He looks at me. I see it in his eyes. He's thinking this is not a cab service. I'm thinking I don't need a cab, but I turned to him and I finally said to him, you know what? Maybe for our own psychological well-being, maybe I should just come. He goes, fine, hop into the front. And I got into the front of the ambulance and we pulled away. We were one of only a few ambulances that actually got away from the scene that day.
Wow.
Who saved whose life?
Yeah.
That's always the question I ask at this point in the story. If she wouldn't have insisted that I get into that ambulance, I would have been standing at the base of that building when it came down. I'd be dead. There is no doubt in my mind.
That's None. Even if you would have gotten past the 38th floor crowd.
I'm saying.
Which opened up.
He would have gone back.
When they saw her.
He would have gone back.
It was, yeah. The rest of the day was just a lot of running and a lot of, trying to be in touch and a lot of paranoia and whatnot. At the end of the day, I met my brother who worked at the time he was working on 47th Street and 6th Avenue. And we were trying to figure out, should he come downtown? Because the hospital that I was at was downtown, or should I come uptown or whatever? We finally decided that I'm going uptown, but I told him, whatever you do not leave until I get there. Now there was no public transportation,
right?
No buses, it was like a snow day without the snow. It was unbelievable. It was quiet. There were no cars on the road. Picture Manhattan with no cars. It was
Eerie.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I finally got, actually there actually was one bus, because as I was walking up 6th Avenue, a bus came by and pulled and stopped like a half a block ahead of me. I ran to the bus, and it was really funny because I took out my Metro card to pay. She goes, put that thing away. We're not charging today. Yeah. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, has New York City changed or what? This is great.
Wow.
And then she made an announcement. She says, look, I'm not making regular stops. If you want to get off, just ring the bell. Otherwise, I'm not stopping. So we got up to like 47th Street and we rang the bell and we got out. And I walked to my brother's office and I rang the bell. And who's there? I said, it's Ari Schonbrun. I'm here to see Elliot. And they said, just a moment. And then they buzzed me in, and his office was on a lower level. I walk down 3 stairs and I walk and I see there's another set of double doors. And I go through the double doors, and my brother's standing about 15, 20 feet past me. And I saw him, and I literally ran to him. I grabbed him. I hugged him, and I cried.
It hit you.
It did. Now, he was my younger brother, too.
Yeah.
But I had been so strong the whole day that,
Do you recall what time of day this was already?
No.
It was all a blur.
No, it was all a blur. It really was. But, I was just like, I'd been so strong the whole day for myself, for Virginia, just for, just survival, whatever. Now finally there's somebody that I know that I could lean on. All right. And I just lost it. And I started to cry. So of course my brother started to cry, but that's okay, because the Schonbruns are very big criers. Ask any of them. Yeah, they're very big criers. they are. The drop of a hat, they cry. So I said to my brother, what do you want to do? We've heard there was limited subway service. We finally got on an F train. We got out to Queens. I called a friend of mine who owned a car service. She said she'll send the car for me. Long story short, I get home to my house. It's 5:30 in the afternoon.
The way you were describing that encounter of your younger brother, where you were enduring so much and holding on and being strong for other people, and then you were finally able to let go and be vulnerable and embrace a loved one in your life. I want to invite our audience for a moment to just identify someone in their life that they appreciate, but maybe they underappreciate. That if they were encountering the type of day that you're describing right now, who would they want at the bottom of those steps on 47th Street? And maybe pause this episode for a moment, and if you're close enough, go and give them a hug. And if you're not, pick up the phone and give them a call and just say, I love you, or I feel so close to you right now, and I'm so grateful that you're in my life right now. Because if we have people like this in our life and they're there for us in times like this, it's something that we really have to cherish that.
It's a nice pause.
Absolutely. And I talk about that, depending upon how much time I have when I'm delivering one of my talks, I talk about that, hugging a loved one, you don't know where you're going to be, do you hug and kiss your wife before you go out in the morning, because you never know if it might be your last day on earth, things like that I talk about. But we got back to my house at 5:30 in the afternoon. There were 20 people in my living room, and I had no less than 100 phone messages. And I remember, because back then it was a little micro cassette tapes. Remember those?
Yeah.
Right? Today's those micros. And I still have the tape.
Wow.
I have nothing to play it on, but I still have the tape.
I challenge Naki to convert that to a digital file, so you can hold on to
Hey,
that.
listen, if you want it, you know my number. Let's take care of it.
So, yeah.
So the people are sitting in your living room just with your wife.
So the 20 people, yeah. And I learned something that day. You have no idea how many friends you really have until they all think you're dead.
And is that what?
That's well put.
Did your wife hear from you between when you spoke to her in that stairwell until you got home?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so she
There's a lot more to the story.
Right.
The rest of the day, there isn't enough time in this format for it. But I will invite you next time I do a presentation, which I might be doing in the 5 towns on 9/11. I'm not sure yet, but I'll let you know.
That's if you miss the UN speech.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, where was I?
You got home, 20 people living around.
Yeah. All those people. No, but the reality is that I did learn a lot that day. It used to be that my job was the most important thing in my life. It was all about the money. It was all about the job. It was, I worked with people that were multimillionaires that were in the office at 6:30 in the morning, and the question is why? Why? The bigger house, the bigger boat, the bigger car, the nicer vacation, the next promotion. That's all they cared about. That's what life was all about. And I admit to you today that I was guilty of the exact same thing until that day.
Well, how did it
All right.
change for you afterwards?
Well, my kids used to say to me, Danny, can you come on the class trip? We're going to the zoo. No, Daddy's got to work. Daddy, can you come to the class play? I got the lead role. No, Daddy's got to work. Daddy, can you come to mock trial? That's after school, so that's after work. So you could be there, right? No, Daddy's got to work late. Daddy's got to work. Daddy's got to work. Daddy's got to work. That was always the refrain until that day. Today, Daddy's on the class trips. Daddy's on the school plays. Daddy's wherever his children and now grandchildren need him to be, because that is what is important in life. Everything else is secondary.
Wow. I bet you do your grandchildren's book orders too.
I bet a lot of people could really resonate with that message, because we're all guilty of overworking ourselves, especially in this day and age where work is just always accessible because of the technology that exists. You could be working in bed at 1 a.m. You don't have to be in your office anymore. So if you don't focus on making a conscious decision that it's family time and I'm going to spend time with my family, you could blink and it's just all gone.
Yeah. I'm a coach, and I talk to my clients all the time about that, separation, decompartmentalizing. When you're here, you're here. When you're here, you're here. All right.
Yeah.
When you're at home, you're at home, and nothing else matters. When you're in the office, you're in the office, and nothing else matters.
Right.
Okay. But you have to separate the events, the times, the days. All right. It's so important. But for me personally, and the only reason I tell this is because I want people to learn, because they don't have to go through what I went through in order to learn from me. Just take it from me, because believe me, I was there. I was plucked out of a collapsing, burning building and given a second chance. And I took it. It was literally as if God was telling me, all right, I'm giving you a second chance. What are you going to do with it? And I took it to heart. And I decided that I was going to change. And it wasn't a change where, I'm giving everything up. I'm going to I'm going to become a rabbi, and I'm going to get on top of a mountain. Those things last about 2 or 3 days, and then it's gone. All right. With me, it was different, in the sense that I tell people I was the same guy on Wednesday that I was on Tuesday, minus 658 friends and coworkers. Wow. Okay. But I was the same guy. As I started telling my story more and more, it started to sink in what had really happened. Because I think in the early stages, I was definitely in shock. All right, for sure. Mm-hmm. I was suffering from PTSD for sure. Okay, but I just pushed myself to go on day to day. Like I said, my life didn't change until I started telling my story. And then it started to sink in what had happened. And I realized, God gave me a gift and I am not going to waste it. So, my davening got better. I started to learn more. I started to do, different things. And I tell people all the time, if you want to change the world, which most people do, especially today's world, all right, we all want to change the world. How do you do it? And most people say, well, I can't change the world. And I say, yeah, you can, all right? Because we all can, all right? But it's got to start with you inside. You've got to make that change within yourself before you can change the world. So I tell people, if I'm speaking to a non-religious audience, Jews, non-religious audience, I would tell them, look, God gave us 613 mitzvos, right? I say, nobody can do all 613 mitzvos, so don't worry about it, okay? But I'm not asking you to do 613. I'm not asking you to do 350. I'm not asking you to do 100. I'm not asking you to do 50. You know what I'm asking you to do? I'm asking you to do one that you're not doing today. All right? Take one mitzvah that you're not doing today and start doing it, but do it wholeheartedly so that when people pass by, they say, oh, there goes the guy who, right? Daven's unbelievable, or, whatever it is, Baruch, big tzedakah guy, whatever that one mitzvah is, do it to the nth degree. And what's going to happen is you're going to find out how you yourself are going to change, all right, and how it's going to affect the people around you that they're going to change. One of the biggest things that I did was I took it upon myself that I was not going to curse. I wasn't going to use any more 4-letter words. I wasn't going to curse. I wasn't going to swear. Now, when you work on Wall Street, that is not an easy thing to do because these guys are worse than drunken sailors. Wow. I mean, they are terrible. But after the incident, all right, whenever there was a meeting, either my office or a conference room, whatever, if I was in the meeting, nobody in that meeting would curse.
Wow. Because
everybody knew Ari Schonbrun doesn't curse.
And that's how you change the world.
That's how I changed my little corner of the world.
Exactly.
Now, think about it. If you can multiply that by 1 billion, all right, you've changed the world. I'll give you, and here's a great analogy.
That is so Halic, by the way.
Really is.
So beautiful.
I'll give you an analogy. If we were sitting in a room, we were 500 people in a room, okay? And everybody in that room was holding a candle that wasn't lit. And my candle was lit. And then I walk over to the guy in the front row and I light his candle with my candle. Is my light diminished in any way? No. Is there twice as much light? Yeah. Albeit not a lot. It's not very... But then you light and you light and you light and you light and you light. And before you know it, you've gone around the entire room. And guess what you've done? You've just lit up a room. Mm-hmm. And you do this, you light up a town and you light up a city and you light up a country and you light up a world. And that's how you do it. But understand something, okay? It says, and I'll put it in English, all right, that we are a light unto the nations. And my question is, we're not even a light unto ourselves. How can we possibly be a light unto the nations? So get moving, get started, start making the change.
Get lit.
Pick the mitzvah.
Yeah.
Okay? Pick the mitzvah and do it, and you'll see how it'll change you and everybody around you.
I think it's that's really beautiful, and I hope that the listeners are really, especially on a day like today where they're listening and it is September 11th, or maybe they're listening to it a few months later. It's really an important thing to think about. And I think it's also worth pointing out that you are the only person from Cantor Fitzgerald that walked out unscathed that day, physically. There were 4 people that survived from Cantor Fitzgerald and those upper offices. And you were one of them, 1 out of 662 people. That's insane.
Yes, it is insane. And that's how I knew that the Eibishter was telling me that, I'm giving you a second chance.
It's unreal to think about the gravity of that loss. And I was just hearing you say your story. It's so obvious to see the Yad Hashem.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt, and even, again, even when I talk to people that aren't from, all right, and I lay out my story and they go, yeah, that was God was watching over you. That was the hand of God. God was watching over you. Even the Goyim, even the non-Jews that I speak to, okay, they love the story.
Yeah.
They love, especially my favorite area, by the way, to speak is in the South. Because those are, that's the Christian right, Bible Belt, they're
very enthusiastic.
Oh my God, unbelievable. And I'll never forget the very first time I went to the South and I spoke and I told my story and I, talking about God and everything. And a guy comes over to me after I finished speaking and he says to me, do you know how refreshing it is to finally hear somebody stand up on the stage and talk about God? He says how wonderful that was. I mean, they're all over this.
Yeah.
So I love going down.
It's a lost art nowadays. God is not really spoken about so much, especially in the world at large.
It was so funny because I was watching a video. I forgot what it was, and it was taking place in a classroom, and all the children got up. I don't know, they were 2nd grade, 3rd graders, whatever, and they were saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
This is recent?
No, it was
Right.
from way back when. And I'm going like, when did we lose that?
Yeah. I remember saying Pledge of Allegiance every day. I went to Yeshiva Darchei Torah, and in 1st grade, I remember every day saying Pledge of Allegiance.
We did. I went to Highlight.
Right.
Okay. And we said the Pledge of Allegiance.
Philly Yeshiva.
Yeah.
Hardcore Philly Yeshiva at
There
the high
you
school
go.
graduation.
There you go.
Really?
Pledge of Allegiance, yeah. And National Anthem.
So where did we lose that?
I don't know.
Somewhere along the way.
Somewhere along the way, we lost that.
I find that, I was doing some research today and there's no shortage of, clips of you online speaking about your story. And something jumped out at me when I was watching, you had done an interview with Fox News, and one of the hosts kept saying, well, that was coincidence, and that was coincidence, and that was coincidence. And I was just laughing, just as a Jew, as a from Jew, thinking like, oh yeah, 2 + 2 = 4, buddy, like so many coincidences happen.
Right.
But I bet that's something that it's got to make you smile when you hear people describe it like coincidences, because we don't believe in coincidences.
Absolutely.
If you don't see God in everything, then you don't see God in anything.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. I just keep going, keep doing what I'm doing, and, just trying to make a dent.
Yeah.
All right. Hoping that, somebody, and my feeling always is if I connect with one person in an audience, I've done my job.
You lit one candle.
That's right.
And that person can go ahead and light another candle.
That's right. You just got to keep the candles burning.
Yeah. You did lose a lot of friends that day, though. And that must have taken a serious toll on you, just, mentally. Again, you woke up Wednesday morning, and how did you find the resolve? What did you do for yourself to keep going?
When I woke up Wednesday morning, I had a very, very bad smoky taste in my mouth. So I was nervous, maybe my lungs got burned, I don't know. So I called my doctor, and the nurse picks up and she goes, can I help you? I says, yeah, my name is Ari Schonbrun. I need an appointment. She goes, just a minute. And she says, can you come in next Tuesday? And I said, listen, lady, I was in the Twin Towers yesterday. I was on the 78th floor when the first plane went in. Okay, I got a smoky taste in my mouth. I need to see the doctor. She goes, just a minute. She comes back on. She goes, can you be here at 11?
Yeah.
But I remember that day, my kids went to school. my wife went to work, and I was home because I didn't have an office. I had no idea where to go.
Right.
Right. And I all I kept seeing that day was the towers collapsing over and over and over again. It was just, it was terrible. And I called my boss that night. I found out my boss was alive. And I still have all the spreadsheets, by the way, of, you know, as we were figuring out who was definitely alive, who was dead, and who was unknown.
Really?
Yeah, and I still have those spreadsheets. Don't ask.
Was your boss from the 4 or from the few hundred that were?
No,
there?
he was not there.
Mm-hmm.
He was not there. It's funny because most of the people killed were traders and salespeople, and the people that survived were technology people. Because the technology people got in at 9 o'clock, the traders got in at 7. So that's what happened. But, and I lost my train of thought.
All right, I want to ask you, when you got home that Tuesday night and you see your wife and see your kids, what's that moment like? Being within seconds of death, and then to be able to embrace with your family.
Mm-hmm. I hugged and kissed my wife, you know. Although, when I got home, and I don't know, I know this is a general audience type of, she literally made me get undressed on the porch. She says, your clothes stank. It was from smoke. She wouldn't let me into the house.
A Jewish mother's a Jewish mother.
Take your clothes off outside, you know, and then you can come in. I mean, it was just like.
She's like, we have guests over. Yeah. Being able to kiss your kids goodnight that night, give them a little bit of a hug, or a little bit of a tighter hug.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, it was special. It was just very, very special. And you know, saying goodbye to them in the mornings. You know, I mean, look, I knew what it meant to be in a situation where you might not. It might be the last time you see your wife and kids. Mm-hmm. You know, and that was a very, very scary situation. You know,
I think something that's very striking about your story is, you know, every neshama that's brought into this world is done so for a particular purpose, and you lived through a life experience that made your purpose very clear to you, and here you are 21 years later, looking forward to going to the UN and getting 2 minutes to tell your story and to share the significance of this day and to make sure that it's not forgotten and make sure that we're sharing this and giving this over to the next generation. And so that's on the global level, and then on the individual level, to be there for your kids on their class trips and to be present at home or wherever we are with our family and with our loved ones. And your life experience has given you that lesson. And I think what's so striking is that that's a takeaway for everyone, for all of our listeners. And you mentioned it a little bit earlier, where we don't have to experience a near-death experience in order to know that we are here for a specific purpose. And hopefully, you know, spending this hour listening to your story gives people an opportunity to do their own introspection and maybe identify for themselves. What am I here to accomplish? What am I here to do?
And that's a very, very difficult question, by the way, you know, because when, again, right after this happened, I said this before, all right, I was the same guy on Wednesday that I was on Tuesday.
Right.
But when I used to bump into people in the early goings, people used to hear my story. They used to say, you know, you've got a mission. You've got a mission. And I go, yeah, what? She goes, I don't know, but you got a mission. And this kept going on, and I finally lashed out at one person. I got really upset with myself that I lashed out because it wasn't their fault that they were like the umpteenth person that say that. But he said to me, you know, you got a mission. You got a mission. And I go, just tell me what the damn mission is. Let me do it. Let me get on with my life. I felt really bad for
But, you know,
guy.
I guess it's also like an important thing to note. Like there are major things that happen in life. And just because the next day you aren't a completely different person doesn't mean that what happened can't form the rest of your life. Change doesn't happen always overnight. It could happen gradually. It could take 15 years. It could take 10 years. You know,
And it doesn't have to be a grandiose mission.
Right,
Exactly.
and that was my point.
Yeah.
That was my point. I didn't become a rabbi. I didn't say I'm going to. What happened very slow. It took me 8 months, all right, of telling my story to realize what had happened. All right, till it really sank in. All right, it took me 8 months. So my change happened over an 8-month period, and that's why it's stuck.
Yeah.
Okay. Many people go through life-changing experiences and it's here today and gone tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Right. New York City, okay, was an absolutely completely different city right after 9/11. It was all for one and one for all.
United,
and it was the
yeah.
United and the flags and everybody was nice and everybody was coming. And you know how long it lasted? 6 months.
Yeah.
And 6 months later, it was back to the old New York and worse.
Yeah. Well, take a stroll Times Square nowadays, it's not good news, and it's not the patriotism that was shown certainly the days after.
No.
And I want to drive that point home about it doesn't always need to be a grandiose mission, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there are some people whose mission is to deliver a riveting address in the UN, and those people need to follow that mission and perform it. But a lot of people, the vast majority of people, their mission is to be there for the child that Hashem gave them. And their child is struggling with something, and they need to be there for their child. That is their mission.
Right.
They were entrusted with whatever they may have been entrusted with, and they are there to do that mission.
And everybody has their own, quote unquote, their own mission. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's, a change the world type of mission. Or, I have a friend who davens in our shul, and they have a child that is, what do you call them? Not mongoloid. Is it mongoloid, possibly?
Is it Down syndrome?
Yeah, Downs. Okay, has Downs. All right. And I look at him every Shabbos, and I say, I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he does it, because you know what? I couldn't do it.
And that's his mission.
But that's his mission. And you
it's
see,
her-
that's the one
Mother,
thing.
it's her mission.
That's the one thing, okay? Kadosh Baruch Hu will never give you something that you can't handle. Always remember that. Always remember that. If you're going through something, don't ever say, I can't do it. Because if you couldn't do it, Kadosh Baruch Hu would never have given it to you. You could do it. You might need help doing it. You might need somebody to talk to, whatever it is, okay? But you should never despair, because if you have it, if he's given that, issue to you, that means you can beat it.
And Nachi's giving me the look. He
I
wants
want to say a great friend of mine once said that God won't give you more than you can handle, but he also won't give you less than you can handle. That's Momo Bauman, who has said it on an episode before, but it's always that flip side that does it for me. We get tested and we get challenged, and we're always like, this is so uncomfortable. But like, it's not just that Hashem's not going to give you more, but he's also not going to give you less. Mm-hmm. So somewhere in between,
Kechuta Sarah.
That's where it's at.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But people should just understand, just one mitzvah, one more mitzvah. That's all. That's all it's going to take. It's my feeling.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm feeling. And, I'm doing what I can.
Yeah.
I speak to as many people as I can. I try and instill, a lesson that people can, understand and take away. And, and I'm hoping that, again, like all of us, we're still waiting for the Yom HaGadol Vanora.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to use something that you said also to just illustrate another point. When you were on the phone with the receptionist at your doctor's office the next day, and she tried giving you an appointment for the next week, and all you had to do was share with her
What you've been through.
what you've been through over the last 24 hours. And as soon as she became aware of what you were enduring at that moment, the gates opened, right? And compassion and patience and no problem. Can you be here at 11? And what that teaches us, I think, is sometimes if we only knew what people are going through, we would be so much more tolerant, so much more patient, and so much more compassionate with other people. And you had the fortitude to share with her on the spot in quick bullet point fashion what you were going through. But not everyone has the ability to do that. And we can be rest assured, however, that most of the people that we encounter on a daily basis are enduring challenges. And it may not have been the type of day that you had, of course, that you just described, but there's something that they're really, really struggling with. And we can be a little bit more compassionate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you know, that's who we are.
Yeah.
Rahmanu b'nei Rahmanim. I mean, it's just...
And you showcased it that day, and you saw it, you know, kind of work back in your favor in real time. When
People ask me, so what is your relationship with Virginia today?
Yeah, what is your... You keep up with her?
Not only do I keep up with her, we became very, very good friends.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
On September...
Saving someone's life will do that.
Yeah.
As we wind down this episode, September 11th, those years afterwards, what is something that you usually do on that day?
There is no usual.
Mm-hmm.
In the early years, we used to have a memorial on that day, and that I used to go to. The first 2 or 3 years, we actually closed on September 11th, but we had services in Central Park. They had a whole thing planned, and they
For the company?
for the company. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Carol King came once.
And it's also very important to note that Cantor Fitzgerald, who had lost over 600 people that day, they, I believe, took on the financial burden of the families.
What they did was they vowed to pay 25% of the profits of the company to the families of the victims over a 5-year period.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going to pay their medical benefits for the next 10 years. And they were going to pay for any child born, that was born after 9/11, any child that was born around 9/11, they would pay through college.
Wow.
So something to that effect. So that's what they did, and they doled out a couple of $100 million.
Thank you so much for listening or watching this episode of the podcast. We'll be back with another episode this Saturday night, so stay tuned for that. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a comment below. We love hearing your feedback, and thank you so much for watching this episode.